Alrighty folks, today we're going to learn about Leo. Everything you need to know to play as him and to deal with him. Some disclaimers first, I play on a potato phone, so sometimes the frame rate gets bad. It's on my end, not yours. Puppets glitch during replays, wherein if you throw a puppet, the sprite ends up in the wrong place and you might see a puppet gliding around the map. That's because I'm using replays. I'm not the best Leo player, but I do know enough to talk about him. Now first off, we need to get to the details and trick shots that Leo has so that the specifics about him will make a lot more sense later in the video. Aiming a puppet will automatically lock to the nearest survivor near the direction that you're facing. This helps you to find someone even if they're behind a wall. Swapping to a puppet automatically turns your camera to the nearest survivor. Both of these two tricks have a limited range. It will not work to find a survivor at the opposite end of the map. Additionally, the second trick, where your camera turns, that no longer works on Explorer because he got buffed, which sucks because Explorer makes me look stupid. The throwing animation cancel is that you swipe up the puppet button right after throwing, or you press it again once if you're on PC. This allows you to teleport anywhere in the throwing arc instead of teleporting only at the end of the throwing arc. Phantoms take twice longer to activate if they're placed down near a used rocket chair, so avoid putting phantoms maybe around 18 meters off a used rocket chair with a survivor in it. Your phantoms can be used to block off, counter, or even trade off certain survivor abilities. The red puppet trick allows you to hit anyone in the path of your teleportation during a red puppet swap. You need to have a proper timing with your hit, so you press the attack button right after Leo breaks his back and bends to his rear. You can use this to score a free hit during a transition or a free terror shock from a rocket chair, a window, or a pallet. However, some objects do block this trick, so it's best to do it with a clear sight line. The Leo drop hit is the most complex one. First off, you need to do the puppet animation cancel, where you swipe up. That way you can teleport right on top of where you need to attack. You can watch the puppet fly and click the swap when it's on top of where you need to be. If you are using a red puppet, you can attack during the swap animation. That way you cancel the post-teleportation animation, but this is not a necessary step, just an optional thing you can do. Once you are mid-air, you can turn your camera around to locate the survivors and do a falling hit on them. You can combine this with blink to ensure that you land a hit. Good Leo players can use this to get a double hit or a free hit during a kite, but I'm not one of them, so I can't do that. However, I'm just letting you know that this exists, and now you know why some Leos would aim their puppet at a rocket chair. It's because they're just trying to get a free double hit on you. Let's now proceed to Leo gameplay. First off, I will talk about his anti-rescue. Leo is a powerful anti-rescue character. His kit gives him an excellent arsenal of tools to use at his disposal to protect chairs and stop rescuers. He can drop things to attack people with, while still being able to attack himself with a rather fast attack that can easily terror shock. Each phantom and activated puppet gives its own fear radius and red light, which would pressure survivors and disorient them about where you actually are, And it can also force survivors to turn away, especially to stop the puppets. This can be dangerous for certain characters that need to aim using their screen, such as Antiquarian, Batter, Archer, Acrobat, Meteorologist, the like. I highly recommend that you use your phantoms for anti-rescues and not depend too much on your puppets. You do have a lot of tricks up your sleeve, such as locating survivors using the puppet aim and the puppet swap camera. This allows you to seek out rescuers before they even arrive, and that allows you to cut them off and approach them in such a range that your phantom will activate quickly. You need to seek out the survivor and cut them off early if you want your phantom to have a short activation time. Phantoms are far more reliable than puppets at scoring hits during anti-rescues, because if it's a puppet, you can one-tap the dismantle button to stun the puppet. That does not mean that puppets are useless in the anti-rescue, however, because if you use it right, it will still give an added pressure that will help you to scuff the rescue, even if you don't necessarily intend to use it for dealing damage. There are two main ways that I see to activate puppets in a way that they actually do score their hits. These are not guaranteed, but I see these as the best ways to activate his puppet. One method is to activate a puppet when they are approaching it from around the corner. The puppet will suddenly approach them, and since it is behind the wall, they're going to be disoriented about where the button is, and this will allow the puppet to score a hit. The second way is that you activate a puppet that is close to them right after you hit the survivor. Survivors will naturally one-tap puppets that they pass by to make sure it does not hit them, but if you hit a survivor right before they reach the puppet, the sudden acceleration of their character from the injury will make them have a sudden speed boost, coupled together with the pressure of trying not to die, to the point that they could accidentally go beyond the puppet, miss the dismantle button, and eat a second hit. There are three main ways to deal with Leo's rocket chair. Number one, if you're doing a solo rescue, make sure that you have items that will allow you to solo rescue. For example, if you're a mercenary, make sure you have 1 or 2 elbow pads, because you might end up in a double down situation. Another example is puppeteer. You need to make sure you have your full health to be able to use those puppets. The next way to deal with Leo is to double rescue. If you don't have any items or resources in your disposal to allow you to secure a rescue without a double down, get a friend. The last option, sell your teammate, rotate to each other, heal up, deal with the ciphers. The thing is, Leo is a snowballing hunter. You know how if you roll a snowball on a snowy ground, it gets bigger and bigger? You roll that snowball off a cliff, it'll gain momentum faster and faster. Yeah, Leo is just like that. For each thing that goes right in his way, he gets exponentially stronger. The moment he downs his first survivor, he gets a bit of an advantage. But each time that he gets an early down afterwards, or a scuffed rescue where someone fails to rescue, or a double down, his advantage grows exponentially higher, much to the point that it will basically become very hard to win against. But he needs to keep building his momentum. If you cut off his momentum, he gets a major disadvantage. It only takes one good rebound kite or one good rotation for everyone to heal each other to give Leo a massive disadvantage that would force him to clutch the game later on, and if he doesn't clutch it, he might lose the game. Leo is basically win hard, lose hard. In this example, journalists turned away after giving a rescue illusion, thinking that the rescue illusion would be enough to rescue, and giving herself some distance so that she can get out of there. Thing is, I had a clear sight line and was able to successfully do a red doll trick to Terra Shock the rescue illusion. This caught her off guard and forced her to do a rescue herself, which she was not ready for. Now that I'm done talking about his anti-rescue, I'll talk about his map control. So, map control is another thing Leo is good at. He's not as good at it as he is with the anti-rescue. However, he does have good map control. When you throw a puppet, it flies at such a great speed, it flies faster than Wu Chang's umbrella. And on top of that, you still get a massive speed boost right after finishing a puppet swap. The puppet teleports allows Leo to easily maneuver between different spots of the map, allowing him to guard multiple things at once by leaving puppets at them that he can go back and forth with and bully people with that speed boost. Despite the fact that you can teleport really quickly to a puppet at the other side of the map, he's still not the best map control hunter because he has the issue of resource management. You only have 2 puppets and a limited amount of fire charges. You cannot keep spamming your puppets and fire charges. You can't waste any of these. Because of that, it's quite easy to lose a puppet if you're not being careful. When you do a puppet throw teleport, you might leave your puppet in an area that no one will ever go to, forcing you to manually walk through it just to pick it back up. And additionally, people can still break your puppets. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, it can be a good thing. If you activate a puppet and let it walk to a cipher machine on purpose, you can do one of 2 things. You can force them to dismantle it so that they'll be breaking a puppet instead of decoding, or when they're about to dismantle the puppet, you teleport to the puppet right before they click the dismantle button, allowing you to get a free hit because they're right in front of you and you have the speed boost. Switching to a activated puppet right before they dismantle it may waste a fire charge, but at the end of the day, you're still scoring a hit. So although it's not the best value, you are still making use of it. You're trading off an entire fire charge just for better positioning and better damage rotation. Typically, what I'd like to do is that I walk close to an area that I want to protect before I do my puppet throw. For example, if there is a cipher machine that I want to protect that's in the 2-story funhouse of Moonlit River Park, I could walk out of the entrance of Moonlit River Park and throw a puppet from the entrance of Moonlit River Park to the other side of the river. What this does is it protects both the bridge and that funhouse so that if ever I need to use that puppet again, it will be for that reason, getting to that side of the map. If you are not careful with your resource management, you could easily end up in a spot where both of your puppets are on cooldown or nowhere in reach, and maybe your phantom charges are all empty. You have to be careful with your map control because even though you can move around really fast, your kite is not very good as Leo. And every time you activate a puppet that uses an entire fire charge, any Leo player that properly manages their resources will definitely be able to see the results and end up with a very well-made map control of the area. You do have to be careful of some obstacles because your puppets can't go through walls. For example, you can have easy control everywhere around the Church of Red Church, But if they're transitioning through the church, or they're in a cipher machine that's on the other side of the church from where you are, you can't get to them very quickly because the church walls and ceiling is going to block your puppets. You don't have a fast way to teleport to them. You gotta make like an L movement. Another example are the buildings in Chinatown and Ever Sleeping Town. But fortunately, there are some straight hallways where you can easily do a powerful puppet throw teleportation, and yippee, get somewhere nice. Now we'll talk about Kite, which is Leo's weakest area. At early game, he has a garbage kite, so you would need to make a good first rotation to ensure a good first kite via proper positioning. He has garbage base stats everywhere. His stun recovery is pretty slow, and his attack recovery is even slower. His range is really short. His walking speed is pretty slow. His braking speed is slow. The only thing he has got going for himself is his vaulting speed. At the start of the game, he doesn't have anything except for a phantom. What's good though is that because of a buff, his fire charge is almost fully charged at the start of the game. If you start a pursuit, you will get a fire charge shortly after, and you will be able to put down a fire phantom that will help you get your first kill. This is also why you need to have a good first positioning so that you can actually put your phantom in a place that matters. His phantoms can be good for blocking off areas, stopping tight kite loops by having another person to help surround the survivor, or by just adding an extra red light and fear radius to disorient the survivors, especially if either you yourself or the phantom gets behind the wall. You can throw a puppet and then swap to it to get a speed boost, can cover up distance and catch up to an injured survivor and secure that kill. Additionally, you can also throw an activated puppet to a key area to help you in your kite, such as behind a corner near a pallet that the survivor is approaching. This will help you to feed a free hit, but if they do manage to dismantle the puppet behind the corner for a brief second to stun it, you can swap to that puppet right after and give yourself a speed boost to catch up to them. In this example, I threw an activated puppet on the bridge to get him by surprise. Leo is very easy to bully using spammable abilities and continuous transitions due to his resource management issue and the fact that he is so dang slow. Always expect Leo to bring Blink until he reveals his trait, because most Leos want their kite to end as fast as possible, and that is either by using an Insolence for a well-placed activated puppet, or from a drop hit from a yellow puppet if they're that good at using it for the kite, or a surprise blink hit. Unnecessary stuns on Leo should be avoided because it farms his fire charges, but do not be afraid to stun him at every critical moment, because even if you do fuel up a few charges, it's more important that you don't take any damage as a survivor. On top of the fact that his stun recovery is pretty slow, in this example, I dropped a phantom that does not see the survivor, so it goes to the nearest cipher. The nearest cipher is in the factory, which requires the phantom to enter through the nearest doorway. And that doorway so happens to be in a route that the survivor is going to, allowing the phantom to still cover both sides and surround the survivor despite not seeing him. You can be smart with placing down your phantoms based on nearby survivors, such as this scenario, to be able to use it to your advantage during your kites. This is my main Leo build. Now for max talents, Insolence and Detention are the safest way to play Leo. Detention is a no-brainer. If you need to clutch the game because they made a good rebound, you need to use detention so that you can easily kill them with your map control using your puppet speed boosts. Insolence is the safest play. It allows you to have a yellow puppet ready to help secure your first down. You can use the yellow puppet to throw it for a speed boost, try to pressure a hit behind the wall or in another key area, or to do the falling drop hit if you can do that. However, not all players like to depend on the puppet to secure their first down. So some players could switch the insolence for trump card so that they can switch the blink into a teleport in late game when they want to clutch the game. Some Leos though will change the insolence for confined space because there are certain looping areas that they find difficulty dealing with when it comes to using phantoms, so they will snowball in that area instead. My personal favorite is, of course, the Insolence Detention because that is the safest play. I honestly like to use my Phantoms to destroy pallets for me. I do not find difficulty using them for tight kites. For my non-max talents, I do have the Control Freak. This gives you a speed boost after falling. The good thing about this is that it does stack on top of the speed boost you get from swapping with a puppet. What this means is that if you swap to a puppet that's been thrown in mid-air, you will get 2 speed boosts stacked together. Hunt is a no-brainer. Leo is very slow and kiting is his worst area. You want to make his kite better. And fortunately, deploying phantoms, deploying puppets, throwing puppets, activating puppets, these do not cancel your hunt. My dump stats are wanted order because I have 10 points remaining, so I might as well put it to somewhere useful. You can play around with this and do whatever you want. You can get quenching effect or desperate fight or wanted order like me. You can do anything with it. These are the points that you can freely use, which is pretty sad because of the fact that you need to get Hunt and Control Freak, so you actually have really few points to play around with. Alright, the traits, let's make it quick. Excitement is obvious. If they have a lot of stunners and harassers, bring Excitement. Even if there's a novelist, he can also bring Excitement because if he is harassing and supporting someone, he's going to force you to eat pallets by switching you to one. Excitement is good because it has a short cooldown unlike Blink, so it does help you to get a free hit against these harassers. Easy peasy. Aside from that, there are 3 main traits I could see being useful for Leo. My favorite one is Blink. What Leo needs most is Surprise for his kit. He already has puppets that can bring him a long distance. He already has amazing anti-rescue, but his kite sucks. So how to deal with this is by bringing Blink. Not only will this help you to secure kills, especially during your first kite, but it brings an element of surprise that can deal with certain survivors. Such as, for example, you can blink hit a perfumer and all of a sudden she can't use the rest of her perfumes. If you blink hit a seer, there goes the owl he just built up. Blink has an element of surprise which is very useful for Leo, and it adds to his kit, especially if you combine it with other abilities such as the pressure of his phantoms or the speed boost of his puppet swaps. Teleport is the next surprise build. It is also very useful, and it's what you would need if you're using trump card. This is because the puppet throw has its own issues. Number 1, it has a limited range, it won't go forever. Number 2, you have to deal with resource management. Maybe you need to guard something, maybe it's not in your pockets anymore, maybe it got dismantled. You don't always have a puppet ready with you. The teleport allows you to get somewhere without using up a puppet. This is very good for surprise, especially in late game where you're protecting last cipher machines or the exit gates themselves. Warp is an alternative to teleport, but I dislike Warp. It does not have the strength of surprise unlike Blink and teleport. The problem with Warp is that once you use the Warp gates, everyone in the world knows where you are and where you're going. The gates are super obvious, they're seen globally, they're glowing bright as ever. This removes this element of surprise and has a limited range just like your puppet throws. The problem about losing your surprise is that Leo has terrible base stats. If, for example, you're playing as Anne, the disciple, you have amazing base stats, really fast speed, a good range, you can even have dashes if you cast already. That makes it so that even if they react to the warp gates and you teleport to them, you can still kill them really quickly as Anne. As Leo, you don't have that surprise. The few seconds that those survivors can prepare themselves are going to screw you over as Leo because they're going to position themselves well for the transition kites or to a pallet or to line up a good ability use like a magnet or whatever. This is problematic. But it does not mean warp is useless. I understand some people would like to use warp. It's okay to bring. I'm just saying the reason why I personally dislike it is because it does not have the surprise factor, and the surprise factor is really important for scoring critical hits at the moments you need them. You can use a pseudo warp technique which costs a puppet, so that's pretty expensive, and you use this with a teleport trait. What do I mean by a pseudo warp? Teleport can only aim at objectives like chairs, machines, and gates. Warp can aim anywhere. You can turn your teleport into an aim anywhere ability just like warp by first you throw a puppet somewhere, then you use your teleport trait on that puppet, you pick up that puppet, then you throw that puppet again and do the puppet swap. That makes a very long range pseudo warp, but it does cost a puppet. This is a way to turn your teleport into a semi-warp if you do need a warp type of build. And it is also one of the reasons why I never use warp on Leo. I bring blink or teleport. For the last segment of my video, I'll talk about character play and character dynamics. I don't want to go too in-depth about the counters because there's a lot to say and it varies by playstyle. However, I can split it to three main categories. The kind of survivors that counter Leo, the kind of survivors that can kinda deal with Leo, and the type of survivors that will easily get destroyed by Leo. The characters that get destroyed by Leo are basically every character that does not have much tools of survivability, especially to help them transition. Some examples will include like Mechanic, Mind's Eye, that's a brain dead. But other examples will include speed boosts that are temporary, like Cheerleader and Composer, because those may somewhat help you transition, but at the end of the day, it's only a limited speed boost. Leo can easily catch up with it just by using the Hunt trait. Characters that can somewhat deal with Leo are the ones with high survivability in the kites because kites are Leo's weakness. What do I mean? For example, Antiquarian and Enchantress can somewhat deal with Leo. This is because they have a spammable ability that will keep distance from Leo at all times. But the problem with this is that Enchantress and Antiquarian only counter Leo if he is kiting them. If they're doing a support or a rescue, they don't really have much against Leo because Leo can deal with them. Another example is Embomber. Even though he doesn't have any kit that can help him survive and transition, he has a coffin. And the coffin is almost always placed in a good kiting spot, so not only is Leo unable to do an anti-rescue, which is what he depends on for snowballing, but now he has to kite again in a position that's in his disadvantage. Other examples include many tanks like Perfumer, Lucino, Seer. Seer is really good if you have good comms, but most people in rank don't have good comms and they won't expect the surprise blink properly. Tanking hits can somewhat help you with Leo because he has a really slow attack recovery, but you're also feeding him presence instead of making distance. And when you feed him presence, he gets both of his puppets early. That improves his kiting and map presence. You don't really want him to do that. The characters that can easily deal with Leo are the ones that have so much ability to make distance. For example, Little Girl can make a lot of distance, Patient can make a lot of distance, Acrobat, Aeroplanist, Meteorologist kinda, Norton, or Dancer because she has a twirl. She can put down slowness then twirl away from you to transition, which is annoying. These characters can keep making distance, which is very annoying for Leo because he needs to down someone so that he can do an anti-rescue and pressure them to getting double downs or scuffed rescues. If he has a hard time downing them, like these characters, he's gonna get cooked. He does not want to deal with them, and a lot of times they might not end up the first kite unless they have a bad position where he can abuse his first Phantom and first Yellow Puppet. I consider Puppeteer one of the characters that can easily counter Leo. This is because even though he is a tank character like Perfumer and Seer and all that, he does have the ability to take like 4 hits, which is insane. That's a lot of hits. What this means is that a full health Puppeteer guarantees a solo rescue against Leo. There is nothing a Leo can do to stop a Puppeteer rescue unless he somehow cuts him off very early on. If the Puppeteer makes it like 40 meters towards the chair, that's a rescue. Like, instantly, that's just a rescue. Not just that, if you use the static harden of the puppet and one of Leo's dolls hits the Puppeteer during that static harden, that eats up the fire. The activated puppet loses its activation, it loses its fire when it hits a static puppet, even though Puppeteer takes no damage and no consequence. Unless I've been glitched in those matches. It could be a glitch, but I'm pretty sure this is a feature. There are 2 types of ban styles that I like. One type is the snowballing ban style. To do this, ban 3 rescuers. This cuts down the survivor's abilities to make comebacks and increases Leo's odds of snowballing for every time he downs a survivor. The triple rescue ban, purely for snowballing in the anti-rescue. The second style is to deal with his counters. You ban everyone that can make so much distance and spammable abilities that are related to survivability. So, how strong is Leo? D tier. The thing is, he relies solely on snowballing and pressure. He is really scary because of the pressure, sure, but he's also very beatable. As the default hunter, he's supposed to set the bar for like the minimum kind of strength that the hunters should have during every meta. He is basically always D tier or C tier. He's never going to rise up above. He still is very fun to play. You get a sort of slow is steady wins the race with all your pressure and clutching. And if you are lucky, you can get a early sweep by scuffing many rescues and just win the game quickly. That's very satisfying. But then again, he is kind of the bar setter. While many other lower tier hunters did get buffs recently, like Jack just got a buff, Clown just got a buff, Wu Chang just got a buff. I mean, I know Clown is pretty cool, but he did get a buff. And then there's Leo. He hasn't gotten any buff yet, while the other hunters are getting tools that will help them. Whenever Leo does get a buff, I'm going to come back to this video and talk about it, but as for now, this is the strength that he has. He is just D tier. Well, I basically said everything there is to know in summary of how to play Leo. Now, I stopped uploading and I'm not active in the game anymore because I don't really have time for this game. But I do hope you learned something from this video. Funny story. During the last Chinese New Year event, I did write a little wish letter going like, "Oh, I wish that Leo's bald hair grows his hot, handsome hair back. Ooh." And guess what, guys? They answered my wishes. This year's Chinese New Year was Leo's one skin, the handsome skin I've been featuring in this entire video. Beautiful. They actually gave him his handsome hot hair. They gave him his hot hair. They finally did it.